We recommend this product be installed by a competent gunsmith.
Modification of your firearm may nullify the warranty of the firearm's manufacturer.
No liability is expressed or implied for damage or injury which may occur from improper use or installation of this product.
You are responsible for the safe handling, legalities, and use of your firearm.
Warning: always wear safety glasses when working on firearms.
Hi everyone, Randy Lee with Apex Tactical Specialties, and I'm here to walk you through the disassembly process for the CZ Shadow 2 and CZ75B series pistols with thumb safety. The tools required to disassemble and reassemble your CZ frames are the appropriate screwdrivers to remove your grip panels, a 1/16 inch pin punch as well as a 1/16 inch starter punch, a small flathead screwdriver or dental tool, and a small 2 to 3 ounce hammer. Helpful but not necessary are a 5/32 pin punch and a pair of tweezers. I also highly recommend the use of a bench vise. Once you've removed your slide assembly according to your owner's manual, you're next going to need to remove the grip panels. Now I need to remove the magazine brake. In order to do this, I'm going to use my 1/16 inch punch and drive out the top pin. Some pins may be tougher to remove and it may require a slight tap with a hammer. In this case, it slides out. Once that's released, on the shadows, I can remove the magazine brake just by pulling it straight out. I'm next going to remove the mainspring and mainspring cap. In order to do that, I need to compress the mainspring cap. So I'm going to bear the back end of the frame against a hard surface, compress the mainspring slightly, and remove the pin. Once that is free, I can remove the mainspring cap and the mainspring. For those with the 75B, in order to remove the magazine brake, you'll have to remove both pins. So in order to do that, drive out the first top pin, and then compressing the mainspring will allow you to remove both the mainspring cap and the magazine brake. Notice the difference between the Shadow or the competition version and the CZ75B series pistols, that there is a lip that retains the mag brake on the bottom. While this disassembly process can be done without the use of a vise, I highly recommend the use of one. In particular, I want to use safe-sided or padded jaws to prevent damage to my frame finish. Next, I'm going to remove the Sear cage. In order to do this, I'm going to lift up on the Sear spring with my small flathead screwdriver and then push on the right side where the thumb safety pin goes through until I can remove the thumb safety. Once it's free, I can remove the Sear cage. This process is the same for both the Shadow and the CZ75B pistols. Next, I'm going to remove the thumb safety detent and spring. Using a pair of tweezers, I'm going to pull it free and clear of its retaining slot and lift both the spring and the detent out. This will allow me access to the hammer retaining pin and the hammer pin. Next, I'm going to remove the hammer. In order to do this, I'm going to remove the hammer axle retaining pin by pushing it from the bottom up to the top of the frame until it falls out. Now, from the right side of the frame to the left, I can push the hammer axle out, and the hammer assembly and hammer strut are removable. Now that I have access to the hammer assembly, I need to remove the mainspring strut as well as this disconnector. Please note that the pins to be removed are both staked at the factory on both sides, which makes it difficult to remove. In order to do this, I'm going to hold the hammer assembly in a vise. So I placed the hammer in a padded vise, and now I'm going to use my 16th inch roll pin punch to knock both pins loose. In order to remove the strut, I'm going to use my 16th inch longer punch to move the pin far enough out so that I can remove the strut. Next, I'm going to do the exact same operation to remove the disconnector. Because I'm going to install the new Apex hammer, I'm going to leave the factory pins in place in the old hammer. If for some reason you're going to want to install the original factory hammer into the gun, I strongly recommend replacing those two pins entirely with new ones. So this is the Sear cage assembly for the Shadow 2. Next, I need to remove the Sear and Sear spring from the Sear cage. I'm going to use my 1/16 inch pin punch and drive the pivot pin out of the Sear cage. Once the pin is free, the Sear and the Sear spring will drop out the underside of the Sear cage. And that's the complete disassembly for the Shadow series. In order to remove the Sear and Sear spring from the 75B series pistols, the disassembly is going to be a little bit different than the Shadow series. In order to do this, I'm going to use my 1/16 inch punch, and I'm going to push the pin from the left side towards the right. Once it's partially out of the Sear cage, I'm going to hold the Sear and gently pull the pivot pin out just enough so that the Sear and Sear spring fall free. The reason I'm doing it to this point is because the firing pin block lifter and spring assembly are held on the right side of the Sear cage. And removing that and trying to reinstall that becomes more difficult because the spring is so small. So this is as far as the disassembly process for the B series pistol Sear cage. This is as far as I need to go in order for me to install the new components from our Apex Action Enhancement Kit. If for some reason you inadvertently remove the pin entirely and the firing pin block lifter and spring become dislodged, let me show you how to reinstall that. Let's assume that I pushed the pin too far to the right and now the firing pin block lifter and spring have fallen free. Let me go through how to reinstall that. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the Sear and put it back in the Sear cage. And using the Sear pin, I'm going to push from the left side to the right just to hold that in position. So now that I've got the Sear located, I need to be able to put the firing pin block lifter and spring back into the Sear cage. So I'm going to place the spring back onto the firing pin block lifter in that little groove. And then I'm going to try and insert the firing pin block lifter into position on the right side of the Sear cage. And please be aware that this can be frustrating and will probably take a few times to be able to get back into the Sear cage. So after many repetitious tries and cursing, I'm going to try to get a little bit smarter than in my process. So I'm going to use a little bit of grease in the firing pin block lifter to help hold the spring in position. Now that that's in place, I'm going to try to reinstall it back into the Sear cage. The spring is going to apply a little bit of force and try to move the firing pin block lifter out of position. So now I'm going to use my punch, and then I'm going to align the eye of the spring with the pin, and then push it home. Now I can check safety function by lifting up and releasing the firing pin block lifter. Now that I have the firing pin block lifter and spring back in the proper position, I'm going to drift the pin from the left to the right. So that I can drop the Sear out and keep the firing pin block lifter and spring in its position. At this point, we've disassembled the frame as far as we need to go.